Supreme Court of the country is about to pronounce a verdict in the big floor test. That verdict, remember, is to decide whether Maharashtra government has to face the floor test in the Vidhan Sabha tomorrow at 11 a.m. or not, as the governor of Maharashtra had decided this morning. Soon after the governor gave that decision, remember, the Shiv Sena went to the court and said that the governor's decision should be kept on hold because the Speaker's decision to disqualify 16 Sena MLAs is also before the Supreme Court, and anything that was done by the court at this stage on a floor test would be rendered null and void till the Speaker's decision was taken. So while the proceedings of disqualification remain pending, the Shiv Sena wants the trust vote to be put off. The government or the governor's office and his lawyers are saying that the floor test must take place expeditiously because the Uddhav Thackeray government has lost its majority. The Supreme Court is a two-judge bench, Justice Suryakant and Justice Pardiwala, vacation bench, which also heard the Speaker's matter 2 days ago. They then decided to defer that till the 11th of July, but they have said they will give a decision today on the floor test. And remember, as I said, Uddhav Thackeray has told his aides he will not face the trust vote if the Supreme Court clears a floor test. He may go and make an emotional appeal either on Facebook Live or before the Assembly. So that's what we are being told. The big floor test verdict expected at any time at the moment will have huge implications for power in the state of Maharashtra. Let me go straight across to Anisha Mathur, who's joining me at the moment. Anisha, what can you tell us? That verdict expected, of course, any time now. What are the various options the court has? I'm told that Abhishek Manu Singhvi, appearing for Uddhav Thackeray and the Shiv Sena government, has asked for the floor test to be delayed by a week. Why a week? Is that one option before the court? Are there any other options?
Well, yes, Rajdeep. Abhishek Manu Singhvi in his arguments had said that since the entire issue of the disqualification petitions and the powers of the Speaker has been deferred till 11th of July, this floor test should also be deferred in the same manner. Now, what is interesting is that Singhvi's argument is predicated on 2 points. One, that the disqualification issue should be heard first because that will affect the composition of the House, and 2, that the governor could not have passed such an order, could not have taken a decision without consulting the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers. In fact, he had argued that the governor had taken a political decision on the urging of the leader of opposition. On the other side, of course, the Solicitor General appearing for the Maharashtra governor as well as the lawyers for the Shinde faction have vehemently opposed Singhvi's argument. They said that the disqualification issue and the question of the Speaker's powers has nothing whatsoever to do with the floor test, that the floor test is the only way of determining who holds on to power. In addition, the governor has also said through the Solicitor General, informed the Supreme Court that he had received a letter from 38 MLAs saying that they were under threat of severe violence. They, their families, their properties were under severe threat of violence. And considering the statements made in public by several political leaders regarding bodies coming back from Guwahati, regarding that the fact that the violence is only the beginning, that prompted the governor to take prompt action, because at this moment he believes that was the only way to ensure that a legitimate government is created in Maharashtra. Right. We're waiting for the judges to assemble back in the court at any minute now, Rajdeep. The lawyers for all parties are logged into the court. The lawyers who are in person present in the courtroom have come back to the courtroom. They're sitting there. They're waiting for the judges to arrive. Justices Suryakant and Pardiwala had also raised certain very clear questions regarding the balance required between the powers of the governor, of the Speaker, of the Assembly, and whether a floor test can be avoided or delayed at all. What are the restrictions on the power of the Speaker? Because remember, Singhvi's argument and the Shiv Sena's argument is that while while the disqualification petitions are pending, there can be no floor test, while the other side is saying that the speaker cannot hold any disqualification proceedings because the there is a no confidence motion pending against the speaker. Of course, the Shiv Sena and Singhvi, who's appearing for the Shiv Sena, as well as the deputy speaker, has argued that the email that was sent with the no confidence motion against the speaker has been rejected since there was no verification. In fact, the question of verification is something that the Shiv Sena is raising both against the Shinde faction as well as against the governor. They are saying that the governor simply came out of the hospital after a bout of COVID, met the leader of opposition and passed this order without verifying whether any allegations are true, whether any Shinde faction MLAs have actually decided to leave the Shiv Sena or to leave the Mahavikas Aghadi. So all of these issues now come to a head. Of course, if we go by the precedents, so far over multiple judgments, the court has very clearly said that the floor test is the only option to determine power in the House. But Singhvi is trying to carve out an exception to this particular case.
The floor test is the only option, yes. However, in this particular case, there are two specific issues. One, the Speaker's own role is being also looked at by the Supreme Court, and therefore who tomorrow conducts the proceedings. There's also the issue of the Chief Whip. Who is going to issue the whip to ask the Shiv Sainiks to vote one way or the other? Uddhav Thackeray's Chief Whip, i.e. Mr. Prabhu, or Eknath Shinde's Chief Whip. These are also issues not before the court, but which could play out in the assembly tomorrow. Nalini, in your sense, as was being suggested by Anisha Mathur, there are precedents here which could technically cut both ways. Karnataka clearly showed floor test has to be done expeditiously. The Arunachal case clearly showed that the court said that the governor's discretion is almost absolute in these matters. The only unusual matter here is because there is the Supreme Court has interceded in the Speaker's case, that makes this a little different. Do you believe that therefore are there any precedents that will operate here? What happened in Arunachal, what happened in Karnataka, what happened with Shivraj Singh Chauhan in Madhya Pradesh, where again an immediate floor test was ordered?
Nalini? Well, Raj, first of all, under the 10th schedule, it specifically says that the courts do not have jurisdiction to enter into any disqualification proceedings until and unless a final decision has been taken by the Speaker. By virtue of the fact that the Supreme Court has intervened in these proceedings without a final decision of the Deputy Speaker on the issue of disqualification, means that the entire disqualification proceedings are now subject matter before the Supreme Court. So this entire legal strategy that the Shinde faction has applied by challenging the role of the Speaker regarding the disqualification proceedings might backfire on them if the same argument that is now being put forth by Abhishek Manu Singhvi regarding the same aspect, that till the time the disqualification proceedings are not decided, the Speaker cannot conduct a floor test. If the Supreme Court even in part accepts it, then it will backfire on the Shinde camp. The second most important aspect that we need to look at is that several times we've seen matters come up before the Supreme Court seeking that a floor test should be conducted. But this is possibly the first time that we are seeing a matter come up before the Supreme Court asking for a stay on the floor test by the sitting government from a state. So if the Supreme Court actually goes ahead and orders it, in several ways this order will be unprecedented, because it will possibly be the first time that the Supreme Court has stayed a specific floor test from being conducted. Because the Supreme Court has time and again said that it is important that a floor test is conducted as expeditiously as possible, because that is precisely where the dance of the democracy happens. So it will be a new order from the Supreme Court in several ways. But because, like you correctly pointed out, the Supreme Court's already intervened in the role of the Speaker, there are several crucial legal questions, a little technical but very important, to determine how these things will proceed. The issue of the Chief Whip, the issue of the Deputy Speaker. If the Eknath Shinde faction is stating that the Deputy Speaker cannot decide on disqualification proceedings because there is a motion for his removal pending. The question that arises is, can the Deputy Speaker sit over the proceedings in a floor test? Can he conduct the proceedings in that case then? So these are crucial questions that the Supreme Court will be looking at, but this will of course require a larger consideration. So several key constitutional questions have actually been raised by virtue of this case for the first time before a top court.
It also raises the question about the limits and the weaknesses within the 10th schedule, particularly when it comes to the role of the Speaker.